Yes, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the venerable Penn Hebron Garden Club. You're in a 200-year-old bar. All proceeds for refreshments go to maintain this historic building. It's $1. I'm the Vice President of the Garden Club, and welcome to the Crescent Hills Civic Association Magisterial Candidate Forum.
Hi, welcome everyone. Should I use? I'll just shout. All right. My name is Leon Zabak. I'm the Vice President of the Crescent Hills Civic Association. I'd just like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to thank the candidates, who we'll introduce in just a second here. I'd like to thank our timer, Nick Cornick, and our moderator, Judy Donahue. Judy is with the Greater Pittsburgh chapter of the League of Women Voters, and she's graciously volunteered to help us this evening. We take a great interest as a civic association in the, I guess, in code enforcement, in crime, and in all those issues. And we wanted to do this as a benefit not just for our neighborhood, but for all of Penn Hills, Wilkins, and Verona. We're planning on broadcasting this on YouTube through our website, and also getting it on the public access on cable. Without further ado, also, I just wanted to mention, we have a basket for questions. For the first 30 minutes, up until about 7:30, you can submit questions to the candidates. We already have plenty of questions that people submitted online, but we encourage you to submit questions as soon as possible so we can get them to the candidates this evening. And we're going to try and wrap up a little earlier, I think, because of the heat. We were planning on going till 8:30. We're going to try to wrap up sooner than that, and then when we close, we'll ask that everyone head to the basement, which is much cooler, on your way out, and you're welcome to personally talk to any of the candidates for as long as they want to stay and answer any of your questions on a personal level. And I would thank you as well for helping with the sound. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Judy Donahue.
Okay, good evening. I was asked to moderate as a member of the League of Women Voters, which is a grassroots, nonpartisan organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Since 1973, we have admitted men, but I don't think they'll ever change the name because we were there at the beginning of the 1920s to fight for the woman's right to vote. As an advertisement just for the League, I brought a couple of brochures with me that are on the table behind me. One's a membership brochure. One is a Facts for Citizens, in case you didn't get that. That has anybody you want to contact in government, their name, phone number, and emails on there. And also, next week in the Pittsburgh Courier, you'll get our voters guide that will list all of the candidates and a description of everybody that's running. So I'm going to begin by sharing the ground rules with the audience. Each candidate will give an opening statement not to exceed 2 minutes. Question 1 will be addressed to all candidates with a response of 1 minute and 30 seconds each. Subsequent questions will be drawn from written questions from the audience. Responses will rotate among the candidates. We had a drawing, and so we'll go to the numbers that were drawn. And that's also 1 minute, 30 seconds. There's a 30-second rebuttal to a question if needed, and each candidate will have an equal chance to respond. And then they'll have 1 minute, 30 seconds to close. Now I want to ask the audience not to applaud and turn off your cell phones or anything will distract. We're here to listen to each candidate. We're sorry that candidate Anthony DeLuca Jr. could not be here tonight to give his views. The candidates, please introduce yourselves, tell us your background, and share what qualities you possess that would enable you to be an effective magistrate, and why, if you win, you would be an asset to our community. We'll start with Mr. Henry.
Hello, my name is Jolando Hinton. I was in law enforcement for 20 years. My current status right now is I'm enjoying my retirement. But I have a feeling that I've been called to come back out into public service and do something that I've always done, which is protect and serve and treat everybody with fairness, equality, dignity, and respect. That's my platform. That's what I'm running on. Fairness, quality, dignity, and respect. Every one of you will have the same opportunity, same fairness in my courtroom as anyone, regardless of your background, who you're friends with, it doesn't matter. The law works for everyone, and that's what I'm standing on. I'm a graduate of Duquesne University. Also, graduate of Duquesne University. Also, I went to Central Catholic High School, and I've done foster care work for about 10 years of my life. I have 3 children. They all were raised in Penn Hills. I've been living here for about 24 years, and that's all I have at this time.
First off, folks, I'd like to thank you all for coming out this evening, even though it's a little warm in here. I'm sure you'll enjoy all the fun talk that we're about to present to you. My name is Sean Carestis, and I'm a proud graduate of the University of Pittsburgh. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and history, and I also have a graduate degree in public administration from the University of Georgia. So the big question is, why am I running for office? Well, I believe a magistrate should have 3 key qualities. First, they should be well educated. Secondly, they should have sound decision-making skills. And thirdly, they should be in a position to be completely unbiased no matter what case comes across their bench. A little bit about my current position. For the past 7 years, I've worked at UPMC, where I've worked in their pharmacy department, predominantly in analytics. Today, I'm their business manager for all 9 of their retail pharmacies. So if you folks have ever had an issue with a prescription or perhaps an insurance issue, there's a good chance we may have crossed paths. Thank you.
I'm Irene McLaughlin, and I ask for your support to be your next district judge. Many of you now know I am a do-good lawyer practicing in the Pittsburgh area for 25 years, and for 10 of those years I served as a Pittsburgh judge. More personally, I am seeking this office because of my godchild, Tayana, who is now 16 and goes by Tay. Tay is my heart. In 2003, Tay's family rented a home on Upland Terrace on the western edge of Penn Hills. After a short while, we learned that it was a mess. It was an estate property, sat vacant for several years, a mortgage foreclosure was in process, there was sewage in the basement, life safety upgrades were needed. I was driven to deal with all these property issues so my godbaby and her older school-aged sister could have uninterrupted focus on their education. With hindsight, I came to realize that whole experience was also my training ground for solving tough property problems in challenged real estate markets. At the housing court bench, I can't tell you how many times I heard, "Judge, please take the property." Back then, there was nothing I could do, and that really bothered me. When my God family, as I refer to the whole family, bought their home in the Universal area in 2008, I relocated to Upland Terrace and have been providing legal expertise to solutions for problem properties like land banking out of my home office. I can connect the dot between the bench and our families, between the bench and our neighborhood quality of life, our property values. That's my passion. That's why I'm running for district judge.
Hi, my name is John Petrucci. I'm the only properly endorsed Democratic candidate on this dais today. I'm also recommended by the Republican Party of Penn Hills. I spent 54 years of my life in this community. 30 years of that was in law enforcement. I protected and served this community also. I started off as a constable, worked my way up to a North Braddock police officer, worked for the Attorney General's office, was an instructor at the North Park Police Academy. Finally, 20 years with the Allegheny County Sheriff's Office. With the knowledge and experience that I have observed over the last 30 years, I believe I'm the right candidate for this position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, for the other questions, we did have a drawing, and we're going to go in order, starting with Mr. Hinton, who drew number 1. For this question, I'm going to give a job description of a magistrate, and I'll ask each of you to add to it, clearly if you like, or illustrate what it means with some real-life examples. In other words, explain in English for the layperson. Magistrates are responsible for whether serious criminal cases go to the Court of Common Plea, for preliminary arraignments and preliminary hearings, and for setting and accepting bail, except in murder or voluntary manslaughter.
What is your question?
The question is, can you expand on that, explain it for us what it really means?
The process for sending cases, it's called sending cases downtown. That's the short term of it. It's called preponderance of the evidence, which means that you just have to tip the scale 51% in favor of guilt instead of innocence. You can, if it's 51% guilt, you ship the case downtown and let the DA's office decide the matter of the case.
Could you speak up, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. When the magistrate level, when you get a case, when you're trying to decide if the case goes downtown or not, it's called preponderance of the evidence, which means that 51% of the person's guilt would send the case downtown. All you have to do is tip the scale just a little bit, and the DA's office would decide if the case is warranted for further prosecution.
Anything to add, Mr. Crescent?
Certainly. I guess when I think of a definition of a magistrate, I simply think of it as, this is the judge that 9 times out of 10, all of us are more likely to see than not. This is the judge that handles our traffic violations, our landlord and tenant issues. This is the judge that deals with any sort of ordinance issues that we all might have in our daily life.
Anybody else? Yeah, Mr.
Every Monday, Judge Romiak has court. Okay? It's called criminal day. And in that day, you have a district attorney and you have a public defender. That particular day, those crimes were committed. We were looking for prima facie evidence. It's a fact-finding session. Did the person have the gun? Did the person pull the trigger? Did the person hurt somebody? That's how that works. Nothing else within that realm matters, but if that person committed that crime that day. And that's how it's sent downtown.
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Petrucci said in terms of the prima facie, which is essentially meeting all the basic elements of the crime. If those elements are met, even while that person is still innocent, you're at a very preliminary hearing stage in the criminal jurisdiction for misdemeanors and felonies. Our job is to assure that those elements have been met in order for the case, the criminal case, to go downtown, or to big court, as they call it. And if they don't, then, that is really the job of the district judge, to make sure that only those cases that really warrant going to big court actually goes to big court. And then you are working with the police officers and the defendants on how to resolve what was a problem, obviously, because it came into court.
Okay, this next one, we'll start with Sean.
Sure.
Is there a role for the magistrate in improving the overall quality of life in Penn Hills? If so, how active is that role, and how do you see yourself fulfilling that role?
Certainly. There's no doubt in my mind that that is a role of the magistrate. One thing that bothers me a lot is how much youth crime we see in our community, and I see no reason why the magistrate cannot take a leading role in trying to curb youth crime. It's very easy to issue a fine to someone and say, okay, be on your way. And at the end of the day, it's probably the parent that's going to pay that fine. And what did the young person end up learning? Nothing. I think that we can include more rehabilitation or volunteer services with our various nonprofit groups to try to find that mentor for that lost youth, and therefore helping curb crime in our community. As a magistrate, I would love to work with all of our community leaders and try to work with different nonprofit organizations to find organizations that are willing to take on troubled youth.
I'm going to change the order a little bit. It's confusing the way I have it. So how about we just go this way, and each one will start with number one. So,
Sure.
Irene.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely believe there is a very active role that a magistrate can play or a district judge can play on our quality of life in our neighborhoods. It goes from the social service connections that need to be made at the bench for those defendants that need those connections. And it's also very much in terms of, again, what I said in the beginning, those connecting the dots between the problem property issues and our quality of life. I know from my time on the housing court bench that there is a direct causal connection when a judge is active around the summary offenses. Those are the code of ordinance types of offenses, summary offenses that come into the court. And it is around making sure that you're actively following through on the enforcement of those orders dealing with code. So with that active involvement, having a system where you are following through, and it may get complicated because some of those cases go to the Court of Common Pleas on appeal, and right now those decisions don't come back to the district judge. That concerns me greatly. In housing court, I had control over those fine and cost hearings after adjudication to assure that enforcement happened, and that doesn't happen now. I'm done.
My active enrollment is going to be a little different. First of all, my door is always going to be open to anybody. And let's not forget we have three. We have Verona, Penn Hills, and Wilkins. Okay? I controlled all three of them. I've worked in all three of them. I know the communities. I know the problems. If I have to go out in the community, take a look at a piece of property that has a code violation, I don't have a problem with that. If I have to go someplace and look at an intersection where they're saying, hey, we had an accident here or there's traffic violations, I don't have a problem. I will be hands-on with the people of the community. I don't have a problem. I do it now, and I'll do it then.
The district justice has a great deal to do with people's lives every single day. Right now, our truancy rate in the high schools is a little bit of a concern. I talked to some teachers in the neighborhood, and they told me that there's two parole officers in the school. And I just thought that was a little bit alarming that we would have 2 parole officers in our school, that our school is that bad where we need to have 2 parole officers. What I think the magistrate would be able to do with those kids is to find out what's the problem with why they are committing the crimes that they are committing. If you understand why, you can develop how you can treat the symptom, and then you can move on from there. Now, the magistrate takes a lot of time with the children because they come to the courtroom. Also takes time with the neighbors who have a problem with other neighbors. And you got to be able to sit down and talk to everybody to find out what everyone's opinion is, what everybody's values are, and go from there and make a proper decision to make sure everybody can live in harmony. That's what I have.
Irene will be first this time. How will you deal with municipal code complaints as a first offense, second offense, and property owners who cannot afford repairs?
Yeah, so code offenses, first offense, second offense, third offense, and those that can't afford them. Yeah, as a housing court judge, I really saw kind of 3 categories at the code enforcement level. They were those who were larger property owners, investors, who needed to really have a firm hand in understanding and applying the code and actually adhering to the code. And then there were kind of the clueless. There were those who really needed support and understanding what code enforcement was, what the code was, what they needed to do. And it was mostly our residents that need support in figuring out how they want to do what they need to do on their home. And then there was the hardships. And yeah, the hardships need support, and that's another place where you have to have those social service connections. And right now, there is a wonderful number of organizations that are in Penn Hills that I'm sure can work with the bench. Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh, Habitat for Humanity, lots of different organizations that are now available in Penn Hills. So making the connection of the dots between those hardship cases and the resources out there is definitely part of code enforcement.
I agree with Irene on the hardship cases. We'll have to go out. We'll have to find some type of organization that would help. Habitat for Humanity is one of my favorites. I would sure seek to help with Habitat for Humanity. On the habitual offender of code violations, we have to take a look at this. There's some laws on the books right now that we need to get the district attorney's office involved in, if need be. Each case is on an individual basis, and each case you have to look at. You can't rush to a decision on it until you actually take a look at it. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm going to take a look at each case, like I said before. If we have to go out and we have to look at this together and go out in the field and do it, we will. I know Verona myself is having a problem with something, and my number one issue once I get elected is to help them out with the big problems they have. And we're going to go out to that site and we're going to help, and they're going to help them out and we're going to fix it. But this is what the magistrate does. Magisterial District Judge does. He gets involved in his community, and you have to stay involved in the community.
30 seconds.
Okay. I agree with what the other two candidates said, but I would also like to add that what you're looking for is compliance, and the best way to get compliance is through education. If a person knows that they're doing something wrong, they'll try to correct it. So what you want to do is try to educate them to know what they're doing wrong so they can correct it. And that's all I would add on to what they already said.
This question, double question, start with John. Sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry, Sean.
No worries, ma'am. Honestly, I don't have that much to add to this particular question. Everyone's right up here. You need to have discretion over every single case, whether it's a repeat offender or a first-time offender. You know, the only thing I would add personally would be if it's a situation where there's a severe safety hazard to the certain tenants or the community at large, I would definitely look at it in a much stern manner.
Okay, and please remember to speak into the microphone, which is not easy, but do it anyway. Okay, like I said, I'm starting with John, a double question. What would you say is the most important quality for a judge to have, and what have you done for the community?
Well, what I've done for the community is protected and served it for 30 years. I was there when the fires, people that were trapped inside of houses and had to be rescued. I was there for the automobile accidents in our town that needed medical treatment. I was there when you had a drug dealer, okay, that was selling chemical to our youth and put a stop to that. That's what I did for our community, and many, many, many others, okay. The quality of a magistrate, I believe you have to be fair. You have to listen. We always have officers' discretion, and you need to have that too as a judge. You have to have some discretion on what you're doing, and you have to be fair. And listen to people. People sometimes they just need to vet, and you got to listen to these people. That's it. Thank you.
The qualities that I would bring would be fairness and equality. And you do have to listen to what the people are trying to tell you. And you have to have an open door policy. So you're open, you're fair, people feel that they have a fair opportunity in front of you. Now, I've been a police officer for 20 years. When Flight 427 crashed, I was the guy calling all the shots for the first 3 hours. I put everything in place. And I remember that day well. I didn't get any sleep because my son was born the next day. When 9/11 came, I was down in the federal building that night, making sure everybody here was safe. There was things going on in our community. I was there making sure everything was safe. My biggest goal is to make sure you feel safe. And as your magistrate, I would make sure each and every one of you feel safe. We have, last year in Penn Hills, there was 370 burglaries in our community, as compared to Monroeville, which only had, I believe, 59. Most of those are committed because our community is older, and our average age in our community is 41, as compared to the national average, which is only 38. So as you can see, people try to prey on the old and the young. So I'm here to try to prevent all those things from happening. And that's what I have.
Well, folks, the number one quality that I see in a district magistrate is quite simply the ability to be as impartial as humanly possible. You know, we all have our own flaws, but you need to be in a position where, whether it's a landlord and a tenant in front of you, whether it's a defendant and a police officer in front of you, you need to look at both parties square in the eye and on equal terms. The evidence needs to speak for itself, nothing else. In terms of what I've done for the community, I've volunteered in numerous organizations. Just off the top of my head, I've worked with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, Adopt a Highway, local Sexual Assault Center, and the local Take Back the Night chapter.
So the most important quality I would have to reiterate is fairness, but fairness also combined with efficiency. And yes, you've got to listen, but you've got to be able to listen in a way that you're really moving things along. Yes, I'm a mediator, and I've learned how to listen in a way that it's a trained skill. And on the bench, learning how to be a listener and how to be efficient with moving the caseload along is what I would bring to the bench. And how I've served the community is all through my time as a lawyer. I'm a public interest lawyer, and I've always worked in public service positions as a counsel aide in the city of Pittsburgh and as a judge for 10 years on the housing court and traffic court and city court bench. And in the last 12 years doing work to assist communities and local government to deal with abandoned and blighted properties. Oh, and I've got 30 seconds to talk about that. Land banking is the ultimate of the tools that I've educated communities about, and mostly through the local government academy as one of their trainers, so that we really know and understand the state laws that are available, and where necessary we created new state laws, got 3 new enactments between 2008 and 2012. So that there truly are now ways to resolve problem properties.
Good job. Starting from Mr. Hinton, do magistrates have an obligation to do something about, or at least publicly say something about, abuses they see being committed by law enforcement people who appear before them?
Boy, that's a great question. Must have had one of my supporters right that way. During my career as a police officer, I didn't put up with any shenanigans as far as anything corrupt. Matter of fact, I had to file 2 suits against the state police for corruption, and then in return they retaliated against me. And it was about covering up for other officers, and I wouldn't do it. So I wouldn't do it for them. And I wouldn't do it for anybody against you out there. Just won't do it. So if you want something fair, I will not turn my back on you. I'm telling you now.
Well, folks, I've talked about unbiased quite often up here, so I think you all know what my answer is going to be on this particular question. You know, seeing something unfair, whether it be from a police officer or really any part of any of our daily jobs, I think it's just human nature. When you see something shady going on, you have to act. It's up to all of us to whistle blow whenever we see anything from corruption or wrongdoing or anything of those sorts. It's not just the magistrate level, it's all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a role for every public official, and certainly a district judge, in terms of monitoring everyone's behavior. It's a system. We all have our roles to play, and what the Magisterial District Judge needs to do is to be able to educate constantly the law enforcement officers, being able to bring them the case law, educate about how the case law applies to the facts that they're dealing with. Every time you're dealing with a warrant, every time you're dealing with a case being presented, preliminary hearing, you are in the position to be transparent, to explain why you're looking at things the way you are, why you have the questions that you have, why you're making the decisions that you're making, so that they get the feedback constantly and that constant education that can be provided by a magisterial district judge.
Yes, I believe that I would make some type of inquiry into it and do the same as the rest of the panel would, bring it to a higher authority so it can be looked into. I don't believe anybody should be mistreated. I believe everybody should be treated the same. Treat people like you would want to be treated. That's my point.
Okay, next question, start with Sean. What do you believe are the causes of the high rates of minority incarceration?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't think it would be fair to point at, it's a race issue or it's a police issue. I truly believe it's a community issue. At some point along the line, the community's letting down certain parts of our community. And it's up to all of us to be engaged. If there are certain areas where there's poor schools, there's high levels of crime, it's up to every single person to want to make that their mission to boost up all the sections of the city that they live in. So I don't feel comfortable saying it's this one particular thing. When we see that in the community, it's everybody's problem.
It is very complicated, and it takes a lot of education to really unravel why there are such high rates of minority incarceration. Probably the best education I've had was with Professor Ralph Bangs at the School of Social Work at Pitt, who does a course every summer on race and social problems. It is deep. It is history. It is being in a racialized society. It's privilege that some have, and it's disadvantage that others have, that is systematic, that is structural. And as the judge, you need to be able to just take the facts and be able to appreciate where people fit in society. I mediate over at the Postal Service, and more often than not, it's white management and black employees. So race is always there at the table, but it's really about whether the parties are wanting to take that on overtly. It's always there, and I'm always open to dealing with that, but the parties decide whether that's the issue. And that's sort of transferable to being a magisterial district judge, where you have to be aware of what's going on in your communities, what the dynamics are, and that there are high rates of minority incarceration.